How about now? Who here is from Iowa? Y'all here to get Bobby on the ballot today? Well, guess what? I'm happy to say that we got more than 500 people here today, and Bobby's gonna be on the ballot in Iowa. Every single one of you is gonna get to vote for Bobby. We're here today because we are tired of these two establishment parties taking big money, running our lives, coming here. You guys get the worst of it. I'm from Virginia, I'm lucky. But you guys, every 4 years, you get a circus. They come here and they tell you that they support you, they believe in you, they go to the coffee shops, but guess what? Every single time they get right into office, they fund the military-industrial complex. They take all the money from us. They make healthcare costs blow up. They make the cost of housing blow up. Nothing changes. Am I right? That's why we're here. Is that why you're here for Bobby? All right. I'm going to introduce our parliamentarian here and our chair, our convention chair. She's heading up Iowa, so she's going to be organizing. So hopefully you all get to know her well. Courtney, handing it over to you. Here is Courtney.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Courtney Hunt, the chairwoman of the We the People Party. We have appointed David Owen as the presiding officer of this convention. Thank you all for coming here today.
So first off, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Iowa Convention of the We the People Party. My name is Dave Owen, and I'm the presiding officer today. I'm going to officially gavel in this convention, but we also want to make sure that people understand, for those joining us at Zoom and our other satellite conventions that are being hosted independently, they will be a part of this process. So we're officially gaveled in. So first, minor technical thing. In order to vote in today's convention, you must be wearing a wristband indicating that you signed in as a participant in attendance at today's convention for this location. If you do not have a wristband, please return to the credentialing area. And when instructed to vote, you will raise your hand displaying the wristband to indicate how you're voting, and I will call that as needed. If you're voting yay, you will raise it. I will then call for nays. They will then raise it. We have one order of business today, but first we want to open with the Pledge of Allegiance. So everyone is able, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, brief explanation of how this works. We are going to open the floor for nominations for one office at a time, with the exception of the electors, who will be nominated as a slate. This is because electors had to be pre-selected eligibility and had to file the forms in order to be eligible. They have already pre-filed those forms and are running uncontested. We will take nominations in the following order: President of the United States, Vice President of the United States, and then the presidential electors. I'm now going to open the floor for nomination for the office of President of the United States of America. Do I have a motion to nominate? I hear multiple people motioning to nominate RFK Jr. I'm going to take that as also having a second. Can we please verbally say that we second? All righty. All in favor of the nomination of RFK Jr. for the We the People Party, on the count of three, please raise your hand in the air with the wristband to designate aye. Aye. All opposed, now please raise your hand to indicate a nay vote. Seeing none, I declare that RFK Jr. has the nomination for the office of President of the United States. The next office open for nomination is for Vice President of the United States. Do we have a motion? Who do we motion? I am hearing Nicole Shanahan, and I think I have a second, but I'm not sure. Do I have one? Sounds like I do. Okay, so we're going to repeat the process. For all of those in favor of nominating Nicole Shanahan for the office of the Vice President of the United States, raise your hands on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, I have to ask for the opposed. All opposed. All right, the yeas have it. Nicole is officially the nominee for the Vice President of the United States. As previously mentioned, the electors there was only a certain group that filed their paperwork. We have the exact number of electors who have filed their paperwork, so we are going to nominate them by what's called unanimous consent. So everyone just needs to raise their hand in approval of our elector slate for We the People Party. All in favor? Are there any opposed? The ayes have it. Now, I'm sure that you would all love to hear from our new nominated candidate for President of the United States, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. As such, I'm going to welcome him to the stage and let him take over, and they're going to play a brief package to introduce him. Who do I give this to? I'll put this here. We're going to wait a minute on that, but he'll be up shortly.
Ladies and gentlemen, real quick, while Mr. Kennedy gets ready to come out and thank all of you and celebrate here with you, we have a couple of quick videos we'd like to play, and then he's going to come out.
Over the last 5 years, our country has become something unrecognizable. Journalists have exposed a massive censorship complex. Federal agencies like the FBI, the IRS, the Justice Department, and even the Secret Service have been weaponized against political opponents. We're subject to constant surveillance. The government wraps itself in lies and secrets. Corruption is pervasive within the regulatory agency and the halls of power. There's only one thing that can turn this all around. And if you thought I was going to say that it's me, you were mistaken. That's not something that I can do alone. But if enough people want to reclaim our country, I can be your instrument. I'll be the sledgehammer that the American people will wield to smash apart the corrupt merger of the state and corporate power. But I can only do that with your active support before and after I enter the White House. And I promise you that I'm going to redeem the trust that you put in me. And together we'll show that we, the people, can take back our power.
This is a day of affirmation, a celebration of liberty. We stand here in the name of freedom. We are committed to peaceful and nonviolent change. We must recognize the full human equality of all of our people, not just to those of a particular religion, not just to those of a particular race, not just to the wealthy, but to all of the people. We must do it for the single and fundamental reason that it is the right thing to do.
A new twist this morning for the country's most famous political dynasty.
RFK Jr. plans
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. who entered the presidential race
October 9th in the state of
That it's time to heal a divided nation and return the power to the people.
Robert Kennedy Jr.
We are told today that our nation is hopelessly divided. But I found something different as I travel this country. I have witnessed an upwelling of optimism that I've never seen before. Something is stirring in us that says it doesn't have to be this way. And so I've come here today to declare our independence from the tyranny of corruption, which robs us of affordable lives, our belief in the future, and our respect for each other. But to do that, I must first declare my own independence. Independence from the Democratic Party and from all other political parties. I haven't made this decision lightly. It's very painful for me to let go of the party of my uncles, my father, my grandfather, and both of my great-grandfathers. But my sacrifice is nothing compared to the risk our founding fathers took when they signed the Declaration of Independence 247 years ago. They knew that if their revolution failed, every last one of them would be hanged. They chose to place everything on the line. When John Adams put his pen down after adding his signature to the Declaration, he turned to those present and he said to them, sink or swim, live or die, survive or perish. From this day on, I am with my country. I'm going to make that same pledge to you today so that I can stand before you, as every leader should stand before you, free of partisan allegiance, free from the backroom deals, a servant only to my conscience, to my Creator, and to you. Every president enters office promising to unite the nation and to work with people from the other party across the aisle. None of them ever does it. They can't. They're already chosen a side. Well, I'm not going to have that problem. I'm going to build coalitions from both sides of the aisle. And except for the small minority of public officials who are actually corrupt, I'm going to tell you this secret. They too want liberation from the system that has captured them. And isn't that ultimately what we all want? Liberation from a system that robs us of our wealth, our health, our hope, our patriotism, our ideals, our freedoms, and ultimately our sense of ourselves as a good and capable people. Is healing our divided nation possible? Let's go take back our country. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
I am a real American, fight for the rights of every man. I am a real American, fight for what's right, fight for your life.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next president of the United States, Mr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Thank you, Iowa. Thank you all very much. Thank you, and thank you for getting us on the ballot here in Iowa. Now, I just had a interview with ABC National News back here. And they asked me about a poll that came out this morning by the New York Times that said that I only have 2% support of people in this country. Do you think if I only had 2% report that this big a crowd would come in here today? Oh, I saw this poll this morning, and I called our pollster, and I said, how did they do this? Because the last time at the New York Times did a poll, I got 24%. And and this was in November, and I won, I beat President Trump and President Biden and everybody under 45 years old. And I beat President Trump and President Biden in all independents, which is the biggest political party now in our country. This is the first presidential race in history where self-identified independents are the biggest political party. 43% of the vote call themselves independents, versus only 27% for Democrats and 27% Republicans. Had a dramatic change. Oh, I said, how did I drop? Do you think that I've dropped 22 points in popularity since last November? I'm going to tell you how they did it. If you look in the crosstabs for the vote, it says, it has President Trump's name, President Biden's name, and then it says RFK. Behind it, there's a parentheses that says VOL. What does that mean? Here's what it means. It means voice out loud. What does that indicate? Here's what it means. When they called the people up, this is a telephone poll. So when they call the people up, they say to them, do you prefer President Trump or President Biden? That's all. My name's not on that. Cornel West isn't on it. Jill Stein isn't on it. This is very different than the poll they took in November, where it was a three-man race between me, President Trump, and President Biden. Now it's just a two-man race, according to the New York Times. But a certain percentage of the people who they called protested and said, wait a minute, I want Robert Kennedy. So that's the people that they counted. And that's why it's only 2%. That's like if they called up people and said, do you prefer the color blue or the color red? Most people would choose from those categories, yeah. And if a certain number of people are going to say, wait a minute, I like green. It's not going to be all the people who actually would prefer green. It's just the people who say, wait a minute, why aren't you giving me a choice? Oh, that's how they do it. And I'm going to leave it to you to speculate about why the New York Times would want to diminish the apparent popularity that I am now enjoying in this country that all the other polls say are increasing day by day. Why do they want to do that? Well, 2 weeks ago, the New York Times reported that President Biden is going to have $3 billion to win this election. It's more than double what any campaign has spent in the past. It's the most that anybody's ever had. It's going to be the most expensive political campaign in history. And President Biden is not going to use that money to amplify his voice or to tell the American public why we should vote for him based upon the issues. He's going to use the great bulk of that money to make sure that his opponents cannot compete in this election. He's done that to President Trump, which I'm no fan of Donald Trump's. And I don't want to beat him because the system is rigged. Because all that's going to do I want to lead this nation. I want to inspire this nation. I don't want to make them feel aggrieved. I don't want to make them feel like they've been ripped off, that they've been tricked. And I want them to feel like they got to vote for who they wanted to vote for. I want to beat President Trump on a level playing field. The the Democratic Party is not just going after President Trump. They're going after me. They're going after Cornel West. They're going after Jill Stein to make sure that you cannot vote for the candidate that you want to vote for. That's not democratic. Last Monday, they've been suing us in all these states, so even when we get enough signatures, they're trying to keep us off the ballot. And we've been winning. We have a young lawyer who has been terrific, who works out of his own law firm, and he's working at a fraction of the price that a lot of other lawyers would pay, but he's brilliant, and he's won every one of these cases, case after case after case. So on Monday, the DNC's law firm called our attorney and said, we want you to give you $1 million a year to come work for us. And we're going to give you Supreme Court cases, and we're going to make you famous. And that's what they said. We're going to make you a superstar. So, and he said no. Oh, if you ask the Democratic Party, the big wigs at the Democratic Party, why are they doing these things? They say, well, we have to do these things. We have to do this we've hired this team to do these kind of underhanded tricks to keep Kennedy, RFK off the ballot. But we have to do that because if President Trump gets elected, it's going to destroy democracy. So, and the RNC is saying the same thing, by the way, that if President Biden gets elected, it's going to destroy democracy. But from my legacy party, the Democratic Party, to make the argument that we have to destroy democracy in order to save it is a big disappointment. But all of us have seen that, haven't we? We've seen both the Democratic and the Republican Party turn against the values that they traditionally represented for our country. And so many of us feel homeless today in terms of political parties because we still love our country and we believe in its idealism. And what they're telling us is that the Democrats are telling us you have to be scared if President Trump gets elected. The Republicans are trying to tell us you have to be terrified if President Biden gets elected because it's going to be the end of the republic. But if you look at these two candidates, they're both very different in terms of their temperament, their personalities, their dispositions, their relationships with people, and the way they present themselves. But on the issues that actually separate them, they're very, very narrow. The issues of abortion, the issues of gun control, the issues of transgender rights, and maybe a few other issues. They're all, and the border, important issue. And all of these are important in their own way, very important. But they're all the culture war issues. And none of them are actually the issues that are existential for our country. The issues that are important if we want to see the survival of our country and if we want to see prosperity for our children, if we want to see the moral authority of our nation restored, if we want to see meaning in the lives of Americans and us proud again that we're an exemplary nation and our survival as a country. Neither of them, for example, has any solution. None of them are even talking about what to do with our $34 trillion deficit. And they can't complain about it. They can't solve it because they're the ones who created it. President Trump, when he was elected for his 4 years, ran up an $8 trillion deficit. It was more, he spent more money that we didn't have than all the presidents combined for 283 years, going all the way back to George Washington, more than all of them put together. Then President Biden came in and he did the exact same thing. So neither of them can credibly tell us, I'm going to solve the deficit problem. And this is an existential crisis for our country. We are already spending more every year to pay the interest in that debt than our entire military budget. Exactly what 5 years from now, 50 cents in every dollar that the government collects in taxes is going to go to servicing the debt. Within 10 years, 100% of the taxes that the government collects will go to paying the debt. Does anybody here think that that's sustainable? Is that an issue that you want left to your children? Don't we need to solve this issue? Don't you think that this country deserves a president who is thinking about this issue and thinking of ways to solve it? What about the chronic disease epidemic? That's even a bigger problem. Because we're now spending, when my uncle was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, 60%. We spent, when my uncle was president, about 4% of GDP on healthcare costs. Today, it's around 20% and climbing. The biggest cost is chronic disease. $4.3 trillion a year that we're spending on chronic disease. And who's making money from that? The pharmaceutical companies. And who owns all those pharmaceutical companies? Yeah, BlackRock. Oh, and those pharmaceutical companies are causing it with some of the bad medicines they give us, and then they're reaping the harvest of all that chronic disease. But also the processed food companies. The processed food companies, which bought up the tobacco companies, Kraft went to work for Philip, became a subsidiary of Philip Morris, et cetera. And they brought 10,000 scientists, many of them from the tobacco industry, to make processed foods addictive and to make them so that they don't fill you. And we now have 1,000 ingredients in our processed foods in this country that are illegal in Europe. Is it any wonder that we have a chronic disease epidemic in this country? And who owns all of those processed food companies? BlackRock. And who is one of the biggest owners of both the Republican and Democratic Party? Right? So they're not allowed to solve that problem. They're not, because there are people making money on that problem who are giving them money. And that's one of the reasons they needed to get me out of the Democratic Party. That's one of the reasons they needed to get Bernie Sanders out of the Democratic Party. Oh, and this is, we're now spending more on diabetes than we do on our entire military budget. When I was a kid, when my uncle was president, a typical pediatrician saw one diabetes case in his entire lifetime. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door has diabetes. And nobody's talking about this. President Trump and President Biden aren't talking about it. They're not going to solve it. They have no way to. They presided over this dramatic increase in it. You will never hear them even discuss it. And yet it's the most important issue in our country, because if we don't solve this problem, our budget is going to be out of control and our kids are all going to be sick. And if we have... Listen, we are a resilient nation. We are resilient. We have terrible problems in this country right now. We have bad food problems. We have bad health problems. We have economic problems. but we also have the capacity to solve those problems. We have, the economic problems are disastrous, but we have the greatest entrepreneurs in this country of any nation in the world. Our farms are getting destroyed from soil depletion and from chemicals and from chemical fertilizers and from nitrogen and phosphorus, or chemical pesticides and herbicides, nitrogen, carbon-based fertilizers. But we also have the best regenerative farming and healthy soil farmers in this country. We're breaking ground on that, and the best people in the world who are doing the most interesting things, and I talk to them every week on my podcast, these extraordinary farmers who are learning ways and developing ways and reinstating ways of preserving the soil, of ending the dependence on chemicals and fertilizers. And we need, don't you want a president who's thinking about that and who's trying to help those farmers transition? And we have a terrible health crisis in this country, but we also have the best integrative medicine doctors, the best functional medicine doctors of any country in the world. Oh, if our country is going to face crises over the next a decade, and they could be terrible crises. We could see the end of the dollar as the global reserve currency. We could see wars. We can see more pandemics. We can see all of these. We have the resilience in our country and the toughness that we can solve any of these problems. But if you're sick, if you suffer chronic disease, it sucks the energy and the heart and soul out of you and your family. And it's the one thing we need to make sure, no matter what we fumble, no matter what mistakes we make, we've got to make sure that our children are healthy. And neither of these presidents is even thinking about those things. They're not going to solve them. Neither of these presidents is capable of ending the polarization, which is also toxic and existential in our country. We don't know how it's going to end, because not only are we being corralled and pumped to hate each other by our political leaders, by the corporations who are strip mining us, treating us, commodifying our children, our landscapes, our people, our health. Not only that, but we now have these social media algorithms that amplify the hatred and the polarization. And it's impossible for a social scientist or anybody to tell us how this is going to have a good ending unless we take responsibility today for ending that polarization. And that's what this campaign is about. And President Trump and President Biden have no capacity to do that. They are the products of that anger, that hatred, that acrimony, the vilification, the demonization. Those are the tools that they're using to get elected. The fear-mongering. That guy's going to destroy the public. No, that guy's going to destroy the public. And the people who follow them are deplorable, or they're elites or whatever. We have to start thinking about that, thinking that way. We need to start looking at each other and seeing Americans who are concerned, who love our country, and we need to give them the capacity to love our country without hating each other. And President Biden and President Trump are not going to be able to do that because they are the products of this system. They are the ones who are fortifying and amplifying this system of vilification and demonization against each other and their followers. Do you think that President Biden and President Trump, that either of them have either any interest or capacity to restore the ability of the government to start telling the truth to the American people? No, I don't think so either, because they're part of this system where they deny that the government's even lying to us. And I grew up at a time when most Americans could not conceive that the government of the United States would lie to them. The first hint that we had was when I was a little boy, and in 1959, Gary Francis Powers, the pilot, was shot down in a U-2 over Russia. And he had a kit where he was supposed to give himself cyanide and kill himself so that he could never be interrogated or used as an example or displayed. And Alan Dulles, who was the head of the CIA, which was running the U-2 program, which was top secret, told President Eisenhower, the pilot is dead, the plane is in a million pieces, they'll never be able to prove it, so deny that we even have this program. Khrushchev and Eisenhower were about to meet for a summit to end the Cold War in Vienna. And Dulles got Eisenhower to lie to the Americans and to the rest of the world and say, we don't know what you're talking about, there is no U-2 program. And then the Russians produced Gary Francis Powers alive. And people in our country looked at each other for the first time and said, oh my God, the government lies to us. It told us a lie. Most people, when my uncle was president, 80% of Americans still believe that the government of the United States always told the truth. And in 1973, the Pentagon Papers came out. The first time we had a history of 20 years of lies that hundreds of government officials had told the American people. And we started thinking it's still unusual, but about certain things, they do lie to us. Today, I don't know if there's anybody left in this country who believes that the government does not lie to you, then you're not paying attention. Because and during COVID, we saw how the media, which at least used to call the government on its lies, that they've become the bullhorn for government propaganda and lies. And that they see their job not as informing the public and exposing those lies and maintaining a constant, fierce posture of skepticism toward the federal government and for other centers of authority, which is what traditionally the press is supposed to do. They now see their job as reinforcing government propaganda and government lies and corporate propaganda. And so all of us, there is no check anymore. And do you think President Trump or President Biden has the inclination, the concern, the capacity to change that system? I can tell you this, that when I become president, the government is going to stop lying to the American people. And I'm going to issue an executive order my first day in office saying that any government official who lies is going to lose their job. And I'm going to give a speech at the National Press Club, re-educating the American media about what his job is in this country, in a democracy, which is not to believe people. Don't even believe me. You shouldn't. We want a democracy in this country, and the job of the press and the democracy is to constantly question, to constantly disbelieve, to examine and parse through every statement by every public official to see whether they're telling their lies. Their job is not to manipulate the public. Their job is not to silence doctors and scientists and mothers of injured children who are who have a right to tell their story to the public. That's not their job. Their job is to tell the truth, to question everything, to examine everything. And that is the America that I'm going to lead us back to. And do you think President Trump or President Biden has the capacity or the inclination to end the forever wars? No. President Biden clearly does not. President Trump said that that's what he's going to do. But then he brought John Bolton in to run the NSA. And we heard today that he's promised the Secretary of Defense, I don't know that this is true, but I've heard this from his people in his campaign, that he's promised the Secretary of Defense spot to Mike Pompeo. Oh, these are the neocons who are going to continue to run our government and continue to embroil us in these destructive wars that are robbing us, of robbing our children of their future, and are running up the debt, that are making us less safe everywhere in the world, every place. And we have engaged in a war over the past 30 years is worse off today than when we went in there. Every place. And everybody knows it in the world. Everybody knows that we have misused our military power. We squandered it on bad wars that we shouldn't have gotten involved in. And I'm going to end that forever. Oh, we know what President Trump and President Biden are going to do if they win this election. They're going to do exactly what they did before. We've already seen it. We know what the future is if we do that. We know they have no capacity to change that. So if you want more of the same, you should vote for them. Does anybody here want more of the same? I didn't think so. Does anybody here want a complete change? Well, if you want that change, you got to vote for me, because I'm the only one that is capable of doing it. And I want to thank everyone here for coming out today, your energy and your enthusiasm and the hard work that so many of you came from all over this state, from over 25 counties, to come here today. And it inspires me, it heartens me, it keeps me going. I said 1 year ago today, I think it was, when I announced my campaign, that I was going to do everything that I could in this country to restore our country to the values that we all associate with America, the ones that we want, the ideals that we want America to represent to the rest of the world, the moral authority of the rest of the world. I'm going to do that. I'm going to give you back your country. I said back then, if you give me a sword and some ground to stand on, that I will give you your country back. Grateful. Hello? Thank you. You are my friends, you are my family. I'm so grateful that all of you are on this journey with me. It's an idealistic journey to restore everything that we want our country to represent to our children and the rest of the world. Thank you all very, very much, and thanks for getting me on the ballot here in Iowa. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, your official nominee for We the People Party, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So there are two more things we have to do to wrap up this convention. First, I got to read something that's a little bit boring. We have 686 credentialed delegates representing more than 35 counties in Iowa. Now, I need a motion from the floor from someone so that we can leave here. That's called a motion to adjourn. I hear a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? And so now, once again, we're going to raise our hands in the air. We're going to shout Bobby, and then we're going to adjourn. So all in favor of adjourning? The yeas have it. What? Yeah, I don't know about the selfie line.
Okay, thank you all.
And with that, we are officially adjourned.
Thank you, everyone, so much. As you all hopefully know by now, Mr. Kennedy loves to meet every one of his supporters, and he always likes to